Hey, welcome to another Hot Topics with Humoriso. I'm John Baldino, and I'm here with my friend Mark Iorio, who is Managing Director of BCAT Partners. Mark, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure to be with you again.
Likewise.
Thank you.
So just to kind of give a frame of reference, right, for folks who are unfamiliar with your work, tell us a little bit about BCAT Partners and what it does.
We look at organizations, John, and we help them align their brand and culture. So we have a tool that we've used over the last almost decade that is proprietary that we developed. It's kind of like DISC or Myers-Briggs, but for companies, for organizations, to give them a personality or a brand persona, get them to understand what their North Star is, their role target, and then we get everyone in the organization to head in that direction, row in the same direction, and align their culture, the people in the organization, with the brand. That's what we do.
Which is great. I mean, I think that, right, obviously I can say to you, it makes a lot of sense. My however, which I'd love to pick your brain on is,
Yep.
however, COVID. How this year are you seeing that affect, right? Even organizations that you have been working with, how has it changed trajectory? Have you seen cultural shifts as a result of it? What are you noticing?
In today's world with COVID-19 and the pandemic, that people are working remotely. So when we say to you, look, it's the same North Star, regardless of whether you work at Humoriso, go into the office, or you open up your computer, you put your Humoriso hat on, it's that culture. That's still the same culture as to whether or not you walk into a bricks and mortar building or you're in front of your computer. You still have to adhere to the attributes that Humoriso stands for. Behaviorally, this is how we treat one another. Attitudinally, this is how this is what our attitude is like toward every stakeholder, prospect, client, each other. This is the language we sort of use to collectively, not scripted, and then here are our visuals. So these are the things that we stand for. This is what we stand by. So regardless of where you are in the world, this is important. Culture is still important in an organization.
Do you think that, obviously besides just COVID, which I hate to even say just COVID, like it's nothing. No, besides COVID,
Yeah.
There's been a lot of political and social considerations as well this year. Are you finding organizations, I don't know, culturally responding to some of what's going on there? Has it changed the dynamic, the fabric of the way people, say, communicate, or the brand identity that they put forward?
That's a great question, John. Yeah, we have actually, and we have a lot of inquiries about diversity, inclusion, equity, and what that's all about is, our process, the brand and culture alignment process, is very inclusive by its nature. Every single person in the organization has to be heard. The voices all need to be part of the organization moving forward. It's kind of like a choir. Everyone in the organization has a voice. And unless someone is, looked at as the soloist, everyone is heard, right? No one is any louder than anyone else. So the whole process behind, BCAT and the cultural norms in society today is that every single person in the organization has to be heard and included. And in a lot of cases, sometimes people say, well, I'm not comfortable with the organization, the direction of the organization, so I'm going to choose to walk away or leave or something. It just doesn't fit who I am as a person. You're asking me to change the way I am, and I can't do that. That's the exception rather than the rule. A lot of people just really want to be embracing something that they stand for, that the organization stands for. So it's very, very important today. And, we're writing a lot about it. We're blogging a lot about it. And we actually have a lot of inquiries about it right now.
And you mentioned, one of these cultural words that sometimes come, well, the phrase cultural fit, like sometimes that comes up on performance appraisals. It comes up in messaging from leadership, C-suite leadership,
Right.
and yet, right, we also, I know this year especially, we've heard a bit more on the cultural fit consideration standpoint that, you know, you need to be careful that fit isn't the goal, but rather because sometimes cultural fit can be seen as sort of antithetical to an inclusive perspective, right? So
Right.
if you really want to bring diversity in and allow those folks of whatever representation are coming in, because we know that inclusivity is more than just, you know, one or two types of people. It's opening the doors for lots of different types of people,
Yep.
diverse, whether visible or invisible. And when you look to it to just be about cultural fit, come in and be and fit into what we're doing, that sometimes can rub against a real inclusive and equity-based perspective to go further.
Right.
You know, I'd love, you know, to kind of hear a little bit about that difference between cultural fit and maybe what we're hearing a little bit more today is cultural fabric, right? How it's woven in, how it complements, rather than it's just everybody's kind of the same.
Great question. That's a great question. So a lot of times I use the Yankees as an analogy, right? And I know not everyone's a baseball fan, not everyone's a Yankee fan. I get it, but I pick on A-Rod and the whole process when Alex Rodriguez came to the Yankees. He was a great shortstop. He had his own sort of personality, his persona. You know, everyone looked at him like, you know, he's the greatest thing that happened to baseball in a long time. He's a heck of a player. So he comes to the Yankees. The Yankees have a culture. The Yankees have an organization that, like it or not, it's the Yankee way, right? The way they speak, the way they act, they conduct themselves. But the important thing, John, is everyone's still an individual. You're still an individual, but you're playing for that team. The team, the logo there is really quite important. When he came to the Yankees, he was all about A-Rod. It was all about him. And over the course of time, they said to him, first of all, you're not playing shortstop. There's a Hall of Famer playing shortstop, Jeter. You're going to play third base. I still need your skill set to be a part of this organization. And part of this culture is that no one person is any better than the other person. Maybe skill sets are different. You know, maybe there's a different contribution from each person, but you're still an individual, but we're playing for the team. We're playing collectively for the team. I don't want you coming in here and acting like so-and-so. Right. You come in here and act like yourself, but you know, it's still part of who we are as an organization. That's what makes us different and unique. But they win. That's the thing about the Yankees. It's a winning organization. And when you look at businesses who have a similar attitude about that, whether it's Southwest Airlines or Tiffany or Ritz-Carlton, they bring in all types of people in those organizations. And they just have that same or very similar cultural feel. So they're still individuals. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, right? There has to be a way that we organizationally treat people as individuals.
Yes.
It's a frustrating reality that, especially on the hiring end of things, that you'll have a hiring manager say, I really need, you know, someone who can do X, Y, and Z. We just really need that now. This role that's open, whether it's a replacement or maybe it's a growth role, right? We're adding someone to the team. We know what we need. Maybe it's a little different than a predecessor, but what we do have to be more thoughtful of is we'll say all of that, but in some instances, we kind of still want this person that's hired to be like the previous person, kind of do things like the previous person, and the frustration around that is that's really not a competitive advantage. If we continue to hire for, you know, the Stepford hires, right? Everybody kind of just is all the same and that sort of stuff. You're never going to really get the kind of robust organization you want. And we know, I mean, the numbers, it doesn't matter what survey you look at, what research that's been done. we know that inclusive and diverse organizations outperform those that do not consider that to be
Yep.
either a pillar of what they're about or even an objective, right,
Mhm.
on their list of what those organizations outperform. Some 50%, some surveys will say 2 times. Whatever survey you feel comfortable looking at, research you feel comfortable looking at, it's still positive, no matter which one you look at. So when we start to look at our brand, right,
Mhm.
be culturally considerate of it, I wonder if part of the issue isn't so much the line level employee, but the leadership level, who maybe they know what they'd like their organization to be, but they almost can't get out of their own way to encourage and enable it to be what they'd like it to be from a cultural and brand perspective. I don't know if
Yeah. Yeah, they don't know how to go about it, John. I think part of it is that, they'll look at, back to the individuals. We had someone on our television show last week or 2 weeks ago in the cybersecurity industry. And, he's out there, Pete is out there recruiting people who are really different. They sound different. They're culturally different. They look different. Why? Because, when you're trying to attack a problem in the cyber world, you need every voice out there. You can't have that Stepford sort of, approach to resolving a problem, because you'll never solve the problem, because there's some people out there, the bad actors, who outthink you because they have that level of diversity in their thinking, right? That they're trying to hack into your system. You're not thinking that way. So what Pete is saying is that I need every walk of life around the table in order to solve these problems. And the problem oftentimes with leadership, John, is that they don't know how to attack the overarching problem in a culture. Bringing the culture together. Look, if you were to say every single day, this is who humor, not the vision statement, mission statement, because they get put on a wall, just like your business plan gets put on a bookshelf and it never gets looked at again. I'm talking about the living, breathing document of who you are as an organization, the heartbeat of who you are. Here's our North Star. We're all going to row in that direction together. And if you don't want to, that's okay too. You can jump off the boat. But we're here to nurture everybody so that everyone works together. And you mentioned performance and appraisal issues earlier. All of that's got to be baked into that. It has to be baked into your performance and appraisal. If you came to me and said, Mark, you're part of Humoriso. What are the 2 or 3 things you can do every day in order to be more like the brand of the organization? And I say to you, John, here's my commitment to you or myself. I plan to be more communicative by listening better, by taking notes, by repeating my notes back to the person I'm sitting with, to make sure that I'm doing a better job communicating, because I don't really do a great job with that. And then I'm not as detailed as you'd like for me to be. I'm going to make sure that I share my documents with you every single day or every other day, so that that I'm trying to be more detail oriented. Now, if you don't say anything to me for months at a time, how do I know if I'm doing that the way I'm supposed to be? So the performance there is that my coach, you in this case, would say to me, every other day, Mark, how you doing with those 2 things that you said you're going to do? Is there anything I could do to help you get over those humps or those hurdles?
Right.
Do you need to go to an Excel class or something? So that's the kind of thing that has to happen. And leadership really, unfortunately, they go into their little silos, and then the rest of the organization kind of does what they're supposed to do.
Right. Well, if you want a culture of communication, just to use that, example, if you want a culture of communication and you communicate with your employees formally once a year for a performance appraisal, that's not going to work. It's
Doesn't work.
not at all.
Yeah.
Yet we still find so many systems that are set up structurally, even if they increased it to twice a year, it's still not enough. Don't tell me about millennials, need constant feedback. People need constant feedback.
Yeah.
Need constant feedback. And if you're
If
going
you
to establish a culture of communication, then communicate.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you play golf or tennis or baseball or basketball or whatever, and you're trying to hone down, let's say your golf swing, and you go to a coach and he says or she says to you, hey, John, you know, you're doing a couple things wrong. Here, let me show you how to correct that. And then every single day, you know, if you're playing a lot, you know, you're trying to correct that swing. If that coach doesn't come up to you for 4 or 5 months, how do you know whether or not you're doing the right thing?
Correct.
You could be way off target.
Right.
So it's that, you're right, it's that constant feedback. You don't have to be on people, micromanaging
No.
people.
Right.
It's just checking in. How's everything going, John? Perfect. You know, do you
Certainly
need
you
any help?
want the task-oriented work, like you're describing, like the swing, for example. I think about that as a tactical piece of, let's say, someone's job.
Mhm.
Whatever that, my keying in of information, if I'm you know have administrative responsibilities or software related responsibilities, or I'm on the line at a manufacturing or distribution facility, and
Mhm.
there's you know very physical, task oriented, tactical things that I'm doing. That's great. Yeah. Um, and we also know, in addition to that, your brand and culture is comprised of more than just the tactical pieces, but also, you know, who you are, the transformative approach that you want to
Yes.
bring to the work that's done. And if there isn't a door that someone can walk through when they're ready to be transformatively considerate,
Mhm.
then we're also missing out on a whole lot of resource
Oh,
in the individuals that we have there, right? If we don't have.
Oh God, you're so right. You are so right about that. It's, you know, those people that you think that are just doing task oriented people. If you start to get feedback from them and start to engage in conversation and dialogue with them, the wealth of information that comes from people like that is overwhelming, because you'll find out from a person or another things that you wouldn't even have thought of in your organization. Maybe they want to advance. Maybe they have an idea to make your process a little bit more streamlined or more efficient, or you know, better communicative within your organization. Unless you're talking to them on a fairly regular basis, you will never find that out. And that's, look, I came out of manufacturing when I first graduated from college, and you know, if your training was like that, I mean, it was very minimal. They threw you out to the wolves basically, and you had to fend for yourself. There was no knowledge base built into that, you know. So no one really knew what I wanted in the workforce. I had to find it for myself.
Yeah, and you know that's where culture
Hmm.
and the way in which it's built is a competitive advantage. Maybe 30 years ago we could argue, right, it wasn't that way. I get it, fine,
Yeah.
but we've evolved. There's change that has occurred,
Yeah.
and now these considerations matter to your competitive advantage, not only your bottom line, right? That hopefully top line revenue increases as a result of the resources you have in place. And so your EBITDA looks a whole lot prettier than it did a year, 2 years ago. Fine.
Hmm.
But also, we're looking at this being a competitive advantage in your hiring, in your retention,
Hmm.
in your knowledge management, in these areas that actually do have real costs to them.
Yep.
And I know it's harder sometimes for us to believe that they do, but they do. If I need to waste a manager's time by having him or they come back to say that a task-oriented role because we have holes, we can't find people to come and work for us
Hmm.
because we're just not really doing what we need to, right? As a an astute organization, I'm losing money on that
Right.
manager that I have now and covering for that, right?
Yep.
So um, I appreciate your time. As we wrap this up, I want to make sure though, how can people connect with you or find out more about these assessments and how they can have this kind of dialogue with you? Where should they go?
Oh, thanks, John. I appreciate it. This has been great. Well, you can reach me at Mark, M-A-R-K Iorio is I-O-R-I-O at getbcat.com. You can always call me on my cell phone, 609-577-4306. Go to getbcat.com on the web, and you can, you know, see all kinds of information. But, you know, we work with companies as small as 3 or 4 people all the way up to pretty international sized businesses.
Awesome.
So
Mark,
thanks.
thanks so much, buddy. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks, John. Take care.